in the studio with me today. I have three gentlemen, two related to each other. Well, wait, all three related to each other. Okay, so I have Dr. Dan Todd here. I have his son, Luke Todd.
Hi.
And I have Nate Ratzloff, who was your cousin. Is that what you said?
Stepbrother.
Stepbrother. Cousin. Where did I get cousin? I don't know. Nate is his stepbrother. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming in. You are here because Jeff and Lois Heron recommended that I have you come in. They said you have a really good conversion story. And Jeff and Lois have their own really good conversion story, so I think they might know.
That's right.
So you were kind enough to come in and share it with everybody. So we're just going to see what happens here because I do not know the story. So I hope it's good and it's more than 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Right.
All right, Dr. Dan, would you please start by just telling us a little bit about you guys and your family and what you do here in Sioux Falls?
Yeah. So I moved here with my family in 2002, and I'm an ear, nose, and throat surgeon.
Okay.
And I thought I was having, I was raised in a Baptist family or Protestant family. I went to Bethel College, and I went to Northwestern Bible College in Bethel, and I thought I was pretty smart. I was a Bible minor, and I actually went to a Lutheran high school just because there wasn't any other evangelical free things like that.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't know much about Catholicism at all. Unfortunately, I think, I was pursued a lot of the things that in my life that were, trying to be the best doctor, the best this, and success on earth, and all this prosperity and things that through a number of circumstances, I probably neglected my family in certain ways, and not to make that the point of the thing, but went through. My wife left me, and we went through a divorce, and then we have I have five children together.
Sure.
Luke is my youngest.
Oh, okay.
And in a sort of similar situation, Nate's mother, Nicole Ratzloff, at the time, they went through a hard time. They got a divorce, and so we're kind of left in this situation where I was introduced to this lady, and she was cradle Catholic, and matter of fact, almost kind of the very conservative, almost really likes the formal Latin
Orthodox,
Mass.
Sure.
Orthodox kind of
super
thing.
Catholic.
Yeah. And but somehow she agreed to meet me through a friend, and then we kind of started dating, and so I think we actually kind of saw each other for almost 10 years. I only had Tuesday nights with her, and we would go out. And so these guys were kind of, at the time, I think he was like 5 or 6, and he was 6 or 7 or something. I have a picture, I pictured like how, I was just trying to look back and like how young they were. But we're kind of left in this lurch of who is this guy and who are these people, and then, in our way of thinking, this, if we do this, it could be the Brady Bunch. Well, it wasn't that at all.
Right. It very rarely is.
No, and, but through a series of events, and I was absolutely, I thought this Catholicism is silly and ridiculous, and I'm kind of a smart guy, and I know a little bit more than these people, and they don't even know their Bible or anything. And as I kind of went through that, God kind of led me to meet some people that really changed my life. And
Sure.
That kind of drew me in, and I just had to meet them. And so even though I didn't become Catholic at all because of Nicole, Nate's mom, it was in spite of that. And I just kind of like, all of a sudden I had Bishop Swain came into my clinic, and kind of like, this is an interesting guy, and this and this, and then I got to know Father Ed Anderson a little bit.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And I was just really taken aback at like, okay, so this guy was the chief of anesthesiology over at Sioux Valley, did the first open heart in Sioux Falls, and he gave everything away, and he went out to Boston to become a priest, and he lives at Prince of Peace and goes to the VA, and I see him like I was just so intrigued by what he actually did with that. And I actually went and talked to him a couple times over at Prince of Peace, and he was just so kind and just so, and I knew how intelligent he was. He's an Ivy League Notre Dame guy, and just like, wow. And he was, and I just found that to be incredibly intriguing. And I think the thing that really started my journey to Catholicism was Monsignor Mahold. I don't know if you
sure.
know Monsignor.
I never got to meet him, but
So he was the
remember him.
most kind, gentle. He comes into my clinic and he had rhino rockets. He had a nosebleed, and they stuffed these big tampon like things in your nose, and they're like 10 centimeters. They're huge. And he came in there, and most people are swearing and angry and feel terrible, and he comes in blessing and feeling, just saying, what a wonderful, thank you so much for seeing me. And he was so grateful and just so attractive as a person. I took those out and didn't do much. He wasn't bleeding, and we got him fixed up and everything. And I just was kind of like, huh. I got to get to know this guy. And he said, "Will you come over and talk?" And so I had these kind of lists of some questions, my Protestant questions about what about this, and and how smart I was, and he just was so kind to me, and yet he really put me in my place with. They called him Encyclopedia Mahold because he knew everything
Oh, wow.
in his books, and he had like 6 PhDs, and he goes over and he goes, "Oh, Daniel, what a wonderful question." He goes, "Oh, it's just when I did my 6th PhD over in Jerusalem and prior to that in Rome, I wrote this 2-volume set on just that subject. I thought about this and I wrote this 2-volume set over 4 years on just that question."
You probably wanted to slink down in your chair right about then.
And he was just, but the intellectual superiority he had and the thoughts, and yet how far advanced he was. And yet he would come back to me where I was, and he would say, it's as shallow as a mouse can wade in it. Or if you want to go deeper, an elephant could drown in the deepness of Christ's love and what you can do. And I was just like, you just kind of walk out there, and just seeing how he lived. So he was, he took a vow to poverty and chastity, and he was so kind. He was brilliant. Everybody said he should have been a bishop. He chose this.
Yeah.
It was just like, and that just like, I was just in awe of him, and I got to know him. And Nicole and I went out to dinner with him a few times. And another patient of mine over at St. Lamb had a cancer, and I fixed his voice box and put a thyroplasty in him. And he dragged me to a men's retreat at Broomtree.
Dragged me.
He did, literally. I hated it. He took me for, and Father Mason was there, and I talked to him. He was about my age, and I was just intrigued by what his intellectual spirit. He's an attorney, and he was so great, and just learning those things that I was very much attracted to the faith. And then eventually, this Peter Kurth was at St. Lambert's. This patient of mine, he was taking another fellow through RCIA, and told me, I said, "Well, can I do that?" I'll go through this. I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
And so I went through the RCIA program at St. Lambert's. And
What year was that?
I don't know exactly. It was probably 7 or 8 years ago or something like that.
Sure.
But it's funny, it was funny. I invited nobody from my family's all Protestant. They were not at all. It's almost like it's crazy, kind of an anti-Catholic.
Well, that's
vibe.
not crazy. That's normal.
And
We get
and
that
it
a
was
lot.
Like, so I had Nicole and I think Nate and his brother were there, and they were the only people there, my guests. And then I thought Monsignor Mahold was going to come. And I was like, where is he going to sit? Where's Monsignor going to be? And then all of a sudden the processional starts from outside. Monsignor's leading it, and he walks out, and he sits up front.
Yep.
And so throughout that thing, he came down and gave, he gave my because I wanted to give my friend his first communion, and so he gave me my first communion on the rail, at St. Lambert's. It was a very special time. It was amazing to enter into the church, and that's been just a wonderful thing for a foundation of truth.
Yeah.
And the more I learn, the more I'm like, oh. And Nate's mom, my wife, has been just a stalwart, and she's so good. She cares so much more about what God thinks than what I think. And
that's a really good thing.
It's just been a blessing. And then as the two, so Nicole also had 5 kids, and I have 5 kids. So
Oh wow, yeah,
10 kids.
yeah.
And these two, the youngest, have kind of been the only ones that have really, just the age. The other ones were older, and so but these guys have bonded in brotherhood. Where, when Luke, I tried to get Luke and his older brother Blake, and I'm hoping Blake will someday come to the church. But I tried to bring him to RCA one time with Jeff, and they just weren't ready. They weren't having it, and it was just like,
yeah.
And so, but Blake and Luke and been diligent about coming, and they've learned about Catholicism a lot, and they never find any objections, obviously, and as I went through, I read Scott Hahn's book and Steve Ray's book and John Bergsma and all these people
Yep.
that are just incredibly brilliant scholars, and you find that there's a lot of very hungry, brilliant scholars that are open, that are Protestant, that become Catholic.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it never goes the other way.
Right. Not
And
usually.
You can lazy your way into the Protestant church,
You
which
can.
the masses
Yeah.
do, because you
Yeah.
don't have to go and stuff.
Yeah.
But if you study the church fathers, and if you look at the history of the church and the things that, like, the more I learned, like, wow, this is what they did. They do the Catholic, they did the Eucharist, and they do this, and they had, and so the more I learned about the more interested, the more sure I am of that's the path, and I want my other kids to know that this is the best way. Now, I know my mom and my dad didn't have the sacraments, and I think they're in heaven because they were so diligent and so they kept the faith and they loved the Lord, but they didn't have the sacraments, and it was more difficult.
Your wife is very smart.
Mhm.
To just let you go about it.
Right.
Take what she did for you with your kids.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's important, I think, especially in a marriage, that if there's a spouse that isn't Catholic, that they have to find their own way. And there's lots of patience involved with that. So your wife, Nicole, must have oodles of patience
She does.
and
Oh,
trust. So, good. So, okay. Luke, as you're watching your dad go through all this obviously had an effect on you. Because
Yeah.
you converted when? Just recently?
Yeah,
right?
this last year.
This last year. Okay.
Yep.
Tell us what you want to tell us about that experience for you of watching your dad and then making the decision yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, just like when he first met Nicole, I mean, he just kind of changed as a man. I don't know. He's more happy, and like everything he was doing, he had a purpose.
Right.
And he was always just crazy about his faith. But then when he changed to the Catholic,
Crazy in a good way?
Good. Yeah,
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, and what was the question again? Sorry.
Well, how was it for you as you were watching him
Oh.
go through that? I mean, how did that help you decide to come into the church?
Yeah, I don't know. It was him and then my stepmother as well. They just kind of, I don't know, helped me along. I did kind of get dragged to RCIA for the first time, like he did to his thing. But I don't know. I just kind of started learning more about it, and it was a lot of things because I grew up Protestant as well.
Right.
I went to Sioux Christian, and I just learned a lot of things that I didn't learn in high school and
Right.
middle school, and it felt like important things. And I felt like the whole Catholic faith in general was just more focused on Christ. And sometimes I felt like Protestant, like church especially, was almost like a concert. And it
Oh,
was like,
yeah.
You know, like it was, I liked it. I liked it a lot, but like I really like focusing on like the history of Christ and why things are the way that they are. And like that's why kind of the Mass spoke to me.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy the Catholic Mass like
Yeah.
that. And so yeah, it was definitely a help that he joined, and my
Yeah.
stepmother as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good to hear a young person say that about the Mass, because I think a lot of churches, a lot of people think that, well, if we don't have a concert or something that's flashy and so on, the young people aren't going to like it. But
Right.
we're finding over and over again that that's really just not true.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
once
yeah.
they discover it. So Nate, you were Luke's sponsor to come into the church. Was that your first time being a sponsor? How was that? Were you did you have to help him through some things? Did he ask you lots of questions? How'd that go?
I thought it was really cool. After it happened, I was really proud of him, because as a young kid in today's world, being Catholic is not like the thing to be. You know,
What?
and especially like in Mass, I noticed Mass isn't the most entertaining thing, but through that, Luke still like found meaning in it, which really stood out to me, and Dan as well too, because both of them, Dan is always writing in his book, taking notes about Mass,
Yeah.
just trying to like become a better person, and through that, I see Luke doing that too, and it stands out to me, and that's why I'm so proud he made the decision to join the Catholic Church
Yeah.
and pick me to guide me through that.
Yeah. That's really beautiful. Do you serve at the altar?
I don't
Serve? You don't? Okay. I didn't know if I had seen you because we, of course, record TV Mass
Mm-hmm.
every week or every weekend. And I was like, have I seen him up there? But no. Okay. So do any of the three of you have a favorite part? Well, you've been Catholic a while. Let's ask the two newbies. Is there a favorite thing about Catholicism for you so far?
Well, I think the thing, as I learned about so I had no idea, honestly, as a Protestant about the Eucharist. We took communion, and it was kind of like, oh, this is once a month, and it was a cracker and grape juice, and it made the service 15 minutes longer. And like, oh no.
Something not to look
And-
forward to.
And so, in studying that, even like with Scott Hahn's The Fourth Cup, and then Grant Petrie's The Jewish Roots of the Eucharist, I just am fascinated how Christ diligently was the Lamb of God, and through the Passover and through the Passion, and everything he did. Matter of fact, I have this in my garage. Everything he did, everything he said, everything down to the cup of wine and what he said, that how he was the Lamb of God and the sacrifice. It's amazing. And then when you're in Mass, and I didn't even figure that out till a while, that priest is in persona Christi, just as they are in the confessional. And they are in the person of Christ offering up their blood and body to God the Father.
Right.
And we're at the foot of the cross. And it's like this perpetual thing. It's like we always want to, because can you imagine Christ walking through his time, seeing people crucified all the time, knowing that was his fate, and how that was, everything weighed on it. And he said, do this in remembrance. And that was it. And so we go back and do that. And the Stations of the Cross, I love the Stations.
Yeah.
I love the Eucharist. And if you can sit there and feel what he did for us, that's what I love about the Eucharist.
Yeah.
I think it's just like, it's amazing. And then the scholarliness of it, as you go back and you look at, Ignatius of Antioch, who was the disciple of John, who knew all the other disciples, even said, this is, if people that don't say this is not the true presence, don't stay away from them. And
Right.
all throughout the early church, it was practiced, the Mass. So I love that. And then, on another note, I love confession. It just seems like that something like I need, and that was never an option. So that would be something that I trying to do more often, and it's just like, wow, and why you're like, you're in a state of grace. Like, this is awesome.
That's something that us cradle Catholics can really learn from converts, to be honest, because we aren't always super excited about confession. We're like, oh no, I have to go to confession. So honestly, that's really good when we hear that from you guys. It's like we have to really change our attitude about it sometimes. So, Luke, anything for you?
Maybe like, honestly, just the significance of everything in the church. So like during RCA, we did the tour of the cathedral.
Yeah.
And we got to ask Father Morgan a lot of questions about specific parts. And it seems like every single part in the cathedral has a meaning to it. And it's all like traditional. It's been passed down through history, and it's pretty cool to see, and especially in comparison to the churches that I've gone to before, where it's just, there's a new theme every month. And
All right, so we've got a couple minutes left. So I have just one question I want to ask the two of you real quick. If you had someone say to you, hey, I'm thinking about maybe becoming Catholic.
I would say go for it. It's like it is the ultimate truth, and I think that there's certain things on life that are just worth following, and I think that the Catholic Church is the one true church started by Jesus Christ, and although man will do his best to screw everything up, it is the most pervasive truth, and if you follow those teachings, you'll be the happiest. And if you try to follow God's will to the nth degree, that will be your best life. I really believe that. Yes, I hope.
Especially if a young man or a young woman came to you, what would you say to him?
yeah, I mean, I would say if you're 100% serious, I would do the research.
Yeah.
And on it, like go through RCIA, maybe even just like a couple classes. And It's. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that was really brand new to me that really just hit me and kind of changed me as a person. So
Yeah.
yeah, do the research, I'd say.
Yep. And going through RCIA does not mean you have to become Catholic.
No.
That's one of the beauties of it is you can go through more than once. You can go through a couple of classes and then be like, hey, it's not for me. I don't think that'll happen. But some people actually go through a couple of times before they become Catholic, and that's totally fine. So, guys, we are out of time. I really appreciate you coming in. Nate, I know you didn't get to say a lot, but I'm really glad I'm glad you came here, and thank you for being sponsor for Luke. That's really a great thing that you did for your stepbrother, brother. I have some step siblings and
They're
half
brothers.
siblings,
These
and
guys,
yes, that's
Nate
the
has
thing.
been,
Yeah,
like Luke will say that Nate's probably taught him more than any other man, and
That's
they're just
awesome.
great brothers. So
that's good. That's good.
They're
I'm glad you
great.
have that relationship. Thank you, Dan, for coming in. I appreciate it, and I hope I never have to come see you as a doctor.
That's right.
No offense, but
That's all right. Yeah.
thanks a lot, you guys.
Thank you.
All right. For all the viewers and listeners, as you are out doing your errands and Christmas shopping this season, if you are approached by someone to sign a petition regarding the abortion amendment that they are trying to get on our South Dakota Constitution, please decline to sign that amendment. That is, it sounds like it's pro-life or pro-family, but it is not. So protect the unborn, and please decline to sign. That is it for us today. Hope you'll join us again next week for more Catholic Views.